Can you comment about the transition requirement that appropriate measurable post-secondary goal or goals must cover education or training, employment, and as-needed independent living? And also comment and discuss the intent of this requirement.
Okay, let's actually begin with the intent behind it, because this is a new requirement that came out in IDEA 2004. Prior to IDEA 2004, there was really no requirement for post-secondary goals. While it was addressed in many IEPs where we saw a section might be called post-school vision or post-school outcome, it actually wasn't a requirement per se. IDEA 2004 comes along, and now all of a sudden we have a requirement for post-school goals for kids, and they must be measurable post-school or post-secondary goals. This is kind of an interesting requirement and a change of practice and a change of thinking, I think. Pretty radical, actually, I think, for the field of special education. And the reason I say that is that prior to IDEA 2004 and this particular requirement, we can look at a similar requirement, and that is measurable annual goals. And we've always had to, ever since IDEA or 94-142 back in the mid-70s, we've always had the requirement for annual goals, measurable annual goals. Now, the question is, in looking at that particular requirement, measurable annual goals, one of the things that comes to mind, at least for me, is whose goals are those measurable annual goals? And if you think about it and you look at them, the vast majority, if not all, those are the system's goals. Those are the educators' or the teachers' goals. Now, when we look at IDEA 2004 and look at measurable post-secondary goals, those goals are the students. They're not the systems, they're not the educators. And what makes it interesting is, if you think about this, for 30-some years now in the field of special education, we have never required or even asked a student what their goals were, and asked them to set out some goals and actually work towards them. Now the requirement is that for every student, there are measurable post-secondary goals, and those are their goals. They're not the system's goals or the teacher's goals. So it's the first time that we've ever expected a kid with a disability through an IEP process to set a goal and actually work towards that, which I think is pretty revolutionary, actually, if you think about that. The intent behind it, I think, is that if you set a goal, you actually might do something or work towards achieving that goal, that the IEP's discussion and decision-making then would emanate from that goal. In other words, we would start the IEP process, the IEP meeting, with a discussion and having that student discuss and tell us what their measurable post-secondary goal was. And there would be one for education training, one for employment, and if it's appropriate, independent living. So if we know what that student's measurable post-secondary goal was, or their areas of interest, then I believe that every discussion and decision that's made in this IEP meeting from that moment on is made to help that student achieve their measurable post-secondary goal. So it's actually a plan to help that student achieve what it is that they want to do. Now, the measurable post-secondary goals, and we'll get back to this one, I'm sure, is based upon age-appropriate transition assessments. So that means in order to help that student begin to formulate some ideas about where they might want to go and what they might want to do, we need to provide some vocational career interest inventory assessments to help that student begin to think about what it is that they might be interested in doing.